Hey guys, this is Jay of Jay's Reviews here, and before we start I've got to apologize. The Sly 1 review was nearly 2 months ago, and it shouldn't have taken me this long to get this review out. However, I do have some reasons as to why it took me so long. One, getting to learn the Elgato software on my computer was a constant pain in the ass that I wasn't in the mood to deal with, but at first, as I stated in the update video, I was recording the game via composite cables, which, while of course looking better than RF cables, which isn't saying much, nevertheless, composite cables is still a shit video format, and my footage didn't look anywhere nearly as good as I wanted it to. So reason number 2, I was waiting for some PS2 component cables, so Sly 3 will look good, and any other PS2 games I'm planning on reviewing after the Sly Trilogy Marathon is done will look good. Of course, this isn't a big reason, but another reason why this review took as long as it did is that I've been getting into the Metal Gear Solid series, thanks to Some Call Me Johnny's reviews. Shameless plug, I know. But anyway, once I sat down to re-record the game, here we are. So this is Jay's review of Sly 2, Band of Thieves. Doing research online, the opinions on the Sly Cooper games are quite diverse. I mean, in my opinion, I would say my opinions are the most common. However, I see plenty of people love Sly 1 for its simplicity, and a lot of people like Sly 3's diversity the best, and we'll get back to that in the next video. Which games fall from second best to worst completely varies depending on the person, which is one of the things that make this fan base so fun and enjoyable. For me, as I mentioned in the Sly 1 review, Sly 2 was my first entry in the series. I was always captivated by the story and characters in all 3 games for sure, but this one had it by far the most. However, I bring this up just to say, the reason I love Sly 2 has nothing to do with nostalgia. My main argument for that being that when I was a kid, Sly 3 was my favorite game in the series due to its conclusive feeling and fun multiplayer. However, even with that, I would have given all 3 games a 10 when I was much younger anyway, because my standards were much lower, you know, all that typical, like, when you're a kid sort of thing. My interest in the series was lost after Sly 3 was done. I mean, the story was concluded, so it was finished. However, in 2010, the Sly Cooper HD collection was released for the PlayStation 3, and I picked that up day one and fell back in love again with the series. However, in June of 2011, Sly 4 was officially confirmed, and with that I went back to the original trilogy and played them many, many times that summer, which is when Sly 2 became my favorite for reasons that will become clear in this review and the next video as to how Sly 3 went down in quality in my opinion. Anyway, since there aren't many videos on the internet going in-depth describing why Sly 2 is how amazing as I think it is, that's what this video is for. Why Sly 2 is one of the greatest games of all time. So needless to say, this review is full of spoilers. I honestly don't think I could ever start talking about Sly 2, Sly 3, or Sly 4 without spoilers anyway. So if you want a spoiler-free review of Sly 2, buy the game. It's great. That's my spoiler-free review. If you want a full spoiler-free review of Sly 2, I would recommend Ant Dude's review. Those are pretty great. So if you're sticking around, let's start the review. Sly 1 was a great game, and even today I still feel the game has aged quite well, despite some age difficulty. I don't find it very hard, but I still might turn off some newcomers. The game was released to high praise due to its good characters, world, visuals, and gameplay. The game sold well enough to have a sequel produced, but this time around, Sucker Punch knew that the game had to be bigger and better than its predecessor. I mean, Jak 2 was a big leap from Jak 1. Both games had an open world, but Jak 2 took more inspiration from popular PS2 game Grand Theft Auto 3, as opposed to the original Jak and Daxter, which took more inspiration from 5th generation titles like Super Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie. Ratchet & Clank 2 was also a big upgrade from the first game, featuring bigger and crazier weapons and a more RPG-like level-up system. I mean, at this point, I'm guessing that Sucker Punch realized that the open world was the future of gaming, and while linear games still have a place, bigger games were becoming a trend, which is why Sly 2 became what it was, or at least that's why I think it did. When the game came out, it sold nearly 2 million copies with much praise from sources such as IGN, GameSpot, Metacritic, and Reviews on the Run giving Sly 2 nearly perfect scores. So with that all the way, let's start with the story, which this time will be a full in-depth analysis instead of a brief summary. 2 years have passed since the final battle with Clockwork in Russia, And one day, Clockwork's parts have been discovered in the lava and are salvaged into a museum in Egypt. When the Cooper gang catches wind of this, all three of them plan an elaborate break-in which is a much more exciting sequence than the police break-in from Sly 1, where they plan to destroy the parts for good. Bentley's now in the field this time, and Murray has a brand new personality. He's grown much stronger and acts like a superhero, and does the things that Sly and Bentley can't do.
Another barrier stands before you. Fear not, I shall bend it like the truth.
Once Sly reaches the room where the Clockwork parts are being held, he's only to find out that the parts have already been stolen. This information was revealed by Carmelita, who believes that Sly was responsible for the theft, and Carmelita is joined by Constable Neela, who lets on that the Claw Gang is responsible for stealing the parts. Carmelita and Neela argue for a bit, only for Sly to escape with Carmelita giving chase. Sly is unsure if Neela is to be trusted, however, her Claw Gang comment is the only thing that the gang has to go off of. So they do some research and discover that Neela is correct. Thus the gang then discovers that a member of the gang, Dimitri Lousteau, a guy who loved painting but was rejected and became evil, and learned all his English from 60s dance shows.
Oh, have you no vision? Are you hearing what I beam to you? You think you have juice? Don't show me a little mind when talking about such big things. You think you can swing the bat? Show your bling and let me shine you.
I have no idea what you're saying.
We'll learn more about him in the next game, but for now, he's just the boss who's the lighthearted character for the sake of getting you into the game. Anyway, he's holding the Clockwork tail feathers in his nightclub as printing plates, so the gang performs an operation to get them, and they learn that Neela's willing to play both sides of the law to get the Claw Gang behind bars. Sly then gets the Clockwork tail feathers and Dimitri's operation is busted. Soon after, the gang discovers that another member of the Claw Gang, Rajan, a man who grew up poor in India, started selling illegal spices to become a king. Now he's using the Clockwork wings as props for his ball, in which the Cooper gang pulls off a string of missions to get in the ball where Sly and Neela dance to impress Carmelita, so that then Sly can dance with Carmelita to distract the crowd while Murray steals the wings. However, with Rajan's reputation ruined, he escapes, and this is where the game's story gets interesting. The gang tracks him down to an ancient temple to which they have to travel through the jungle to get to, but he's also holding the Clockwork Heart to fuel his illegal spice operation. What exactly he is using it for is yet to be discovered, but anyway, Neela again helps the gang out to get a piece of the Clockwork Heart, whereas Rajan keeps the other one himself. Bentley devises a plan to flood the whole temple to force Rajan to come out of hiding. When Rajan finally shows up, it's time for Neela and Sly to face off against him, but right then and there, Neela betrays the gang, and then Sly is blasted with electricity and sent flying to the ground. And then it's just left to Murray to fight Rajan, to which he wins. But right then and there, after Murray grabs a piece of the Clockwork Heart, Carmelita, Neela, and one of the higher-ups at Interpol, the Contessa, show up, of course about to arrest Sly, Murray, and Rajan. But right then, Neela pulls up a picture of Sly and Carmelita dancing from Chapter 2, and claims that Carmelita was working with the Cooper gang the whole time, so then the Contessa has Carmelita arrested too. Bentley witnesses this all go down from a distance, and now he's all alone. So he learns more about the Contessa and learns that she married a wealthy man, and it's implied that she poisoned him to inherit his money, and used it and her education to open a rehabilitation center for criminals, which is how she got a high position in Interpol. Bentley then does some spying on the Contessa and learns that she hypnotizes criminals to learn where they've stashed their loot. And that's also how she's a secret member of the Claw Gang. But with that information, Bentley then busts Sly out of jail, and the two work together to bust out Murray, because Murray got himself into solitary confinement, so that'd be easier for Sly and Bentley to rescue him unnoticed. However, while he's in there, he's forced to eat the spice that Rajan made. However, now it's been affected by the Contessa's hypno stuff, making him more susceptible to hypnosis. So when Sly and Bentley attempt a rescue, Murray's in a very agitated state of mind, to which he needs to be broken out. With Murray back to normal, the gang gives chase to the Contessa, but she escapes on her blimp, but next time the gang will be ready for her. So when they go back to work, they discover that the Contessa has the clockwork eyes and is using them to enhance her hypnosis. But unfortunately for the gang and the Contessa, Neela has been ranked up in Interpol and now has got an army of mercenaries to take on the Contessa, since Neela has revealed the Contessa's corrupt actions in Interpol. So the gang are stepping into a battlefield, but they're determined to get those clockwork eyes back. only for Sly to sneak into the Contessa's castle and discover that she's using the clockwork eyes on Carmelita. So a rescue now becomes another thing on the Cooper gang's plate. But everything comes to a head at the end where Carmelita is freed and fight against the Contessa's blimp, and she gets one of the clockwork eyes and tries to get away in a tank for Murray to give chase and get the eye back. Meanwhile, Neela gets the other eye, and Sly gives chase to her, only for the Contessa to stop Neela and get into a fight with Sly. The Contessa is then arrested and the clockwork eyes are in Sly's hands, and Carmelita is on the run from Interpol. And Neela is ranked up, yet again. Then Chapter 6 begins, and we're on the hunt for another Claw Gang member, Jean Besson, who was a normal hunter and log cutter in the 1850s up in Canada, but he was frozen in an avalanche, and now he's thawed out and is a member of the Claw Gang. And he has the clockwork stomach and the 2 lungs. And all 3 of them are powering his Iron Horse trains, so the gang busts into the trains and steals the parts one by one, only to be stopped by Neela, who is also trying to get the parts. But Bentley's able to stop her and the gang gets away. However, in Canada, the gang learned of Arpeggio, the man behind the whole thing, and how Jean Besson is capturing Northern Light energy for an unknown reason for Arpeggio to collect from his blimp. And the Cooper gang needs to get on there to get Arpeggio's clockwork brain. However, they have unfinished business with Jean Besson because he's also carrying the clockwork talons and he's putting up as a prize for his lumberjack games. So Sly, Bentley, and Murray try to get perfect scores in their respective events, meanwhile cheating to get Jean Besson zeros, until he then scares the guards into giving him perfect scores anyway. They then realize their plan isn't working and then beat up the guards and take their place. Jean Besson sees through the disguise and beats the gang, and locks them up, only then for Bentley to sneak through a small hatch to then be confronted by Jean Besson. Jean Besson reveals that while the gang was unconscious, their HQ was raided and all the clockwork parts were sold to Arpeggio. Bentley then gets furious and defeats Jean Besson with his ingenuity. But time is short and the gang need to stow away inside the giant battery that Arpeggio is about to pick up for Northern Light energy, not knowing the gang was inside. However, this day was not a victory, for all the gang's efforts were wasted, and Murray was particularly upset because the team van floated away. They also learned about Arpeggio's past of being jealous of other birds' abilities that he doesn't have, but that's not particularly important because Arpeggio is not a particularly important character. But now's not the time to be upset because there is work to do. Sly breaks into Arpeggio's lab and discovers that much to the shock of Sly and Bentley, clockwork is almost completely rebuilt. Sly tries to shut it down but only speeds up the process and Arpeggio comes out, with Neela by his side. And this is where we find out how it all comes together. Basically, Rajan made the illegal spice. The Contessa put her hypno stuff in, and Jean Besson was shipping it from Rajan to the Contessa to Dimitri, who then Dimitri had the hypno spice sold at his nightclub, meaning that almost everyone in Paris, France would be susceptible to hypnosis. Meanwhile, Jean Besson was capturing Northern Light energy to give to Arpeggio so he could use his blimp to display the lights over Paris, making everyone hypnotized. Meanwhile, Neela's whole purpose was to get Sly and the gang going so that they would take out the other Claw Gang members, so that Arpeggio could take all the parts and join with the clockwork frame and rule all of Paris. But before he does, Neela betrays him, and joins with the clockwork frame and becomes the self-titled Clockla and kills Arpeggio. But it's, again, kids' game, quote-unquote. So then she could commit his plan for herself, and this was her true plan all along, revealing that she was the true villain this whole time. But it's not over yet, for the Cooper Gang and Carmelita join up in one final battle against Clockla, only for her to destroy the entire blimp and capture Bentley and Murray, for Sly to have to commit a rescue.
You might have a new body, Neela, but you're still the low-down, backstabbing coward we've beaten time and time again. This won't be any different.
Knocking Clockla down to the surface, but she's still alive, and she mentions that the hate ship is the source of the power behind Clockwork, which is what truly makes him invincible. Murray opens the head for Bentley to get in and get the hate ship, however, in a surprise twist, the head collapses on Bentley. Murray opens it, but it's too late and Bentley is now paralyzed. But then the parts are finally destroyed thanks to Carmelita destroying the hate ship, but then tells them all that they're under arrest.
She informed us that we were all under arrest. But one look at my gang told me that we were in no shape for a fast getaway. So I offered to go peacefully in exchange for letting my friends walk. They'd taken some bruises through all of this, but I was surprised, shocked really, to see them leave their gear behind as they walked away. Their wounds were deeper than I'd imagined. Those guys were hurting.
but then Sly decides to let his friends go and have Carmelita just take him. And Carmelita gets her job back due to capturing Sly. So Sly and Carmelita share a conversation about this whole thing. When the ride is taking too long, she checks on the pilot and he's gone, and Sly escapes, thus ending Sly 2 Band of Thieves. And Jesus Christ, if you couldn't already tell, I love this game's story. The story twists and turns all the time, it changes the status quo, and every character feels fleshed out. Let's start with the villains. I said the villains were all memorable in the previous game. However, here the backstories are more three-dimensional, and the villains all get more screen time, thus making them more interesting. We even see some villains appear several chapters prior to their own chapter. I love how the Claw Gang has a super interconnected plot. Unlike the last time, where each villain sort of existed in a void, and with each villain beaten, you're directly throwing a wrench in their plan. And some people think it's a problem that Rajan and the Contessa and Jean Besson all have 2 chapters. However, I must ask, if it was, say, Rajan's cousin in Chapter 3, all the missions were the exact same, would you really be enjoying the chapter any more or less? Since these villains have multiple chapters, they get more screen time, thus making them more fleshed out characters. And what's wrong with that? Neela's an awesome villain. She's a likable character at first, making the turn more emotional for the gang and the player. And making her the final boss is also a good idea because she was built up the whole game. She also lends herself to debate since there are many fan theories about her past, making her a much better character than Clockwork himself, and even more than Dr. M in Sly 3. Another thing that makes this story great is the character development for our main characters. Of course, the development isn't done yet, because we still have Sly 3 to resolve the cliffhanger ending from this game, but as far as this game goes, Bentley goes from a guy in the van who gives you the information to the field demolition expert. However, he's really nervous about being in the field in the beginning, and gets more comfortable as time goes on, leading to the ending, and we'll see where that goes in the next video. Murray as well goes from the guy who drives the van to the muscle of the team, and this leads to the ending, and we'll see where this goes next time. And Sly has a lot in his mind in this game, like trusting Neela and making sure what happened to him never happens again, which that's why he wants to destroy the Clockwork parts. But this comes at a cost, and again, we'll see how that arc wraps up next time. And with all 3 characters getting more dialogue and screen time, we really get a family dynamic between the characters, making them more likable. And I also really enjoy all the foreshadowing in this game, making it fun to replay the game and catch up on these hints. Overall, this is the darkest entry in the trilogy for sure, because we see the characters at their lowest point, culminating with the cliffhanger ending, which is why I feel as if Sucker Punch was homaging the classic Star Wars trilogy when writing this one. Not that this is a ripoff, because the stories have almost nothing in common, but the structure where the first one is the introduction of the characters and setting, the second one is the darkest and most dramatic, and the third one begins by wrapping up loose ends from the previous game/movie's cliffhanger ending, and ends with a happy ending for the characters. Things like this is why it bothers me when people act as if these games don't have a story, when they have hours of cutscenes and the characters all take it seriously. People can take the original Metal Gear Solid story seriously, or Majora's Mask story seriously, where characters' mouths don't even move, and yet the same people can't take this seriously, or just don't even care enough to. You can say it's just a game, but personally I've always been more motivated to finish a game like this if the story is strong. So anyway, since this is a video game, let's talk about the gameplay. One great thing right off the bat is that Sly can do the Ninja Spire jump and the rail walk and rail slide, which is great because those were his best abilities from the last time. Whereas the others were pretty useless, so I don't really miss them this time around. The Sly control is a bit better, but it's pretty much the same thing. This time he can sprint to go faster than he could in Sly 1, however this attracts guards more easily. The archaic health system is gone, and Sly and the gang now have a health bar, so one-hit deaths are no longer a part of the experience. So basically Sly 2 is a much more recommendable game to anybody that wants to try the series. And that anybody's that more familiar with modern game design, that is. To compensate, the enemies don't go down in one hit anymore, however there are different classes of enemies. The small guy who goes down easily, the medium guy who takes a standard amount of hits, and lastly the flashlight guards who take the most damage and have guns. Sly has more combat moves in this game, such as a spin attack and the knockout smash, which you press triangle followed by square behind an unsuspecting enemy for an instant takedown. However, this is a very loud technique, so don't really do it in a big room. Sly can also crawl through vents by pressing circle, and his most significant new ability is the pickpocket, where Sly can use his cane to dig through an enemy's pockets and take their money or valuables, which we'll get back to later. So between the three, Sly is definitely the most balanced character. Bentley being the smallest and smartest of the gang, he takes the most damage and takes the longest to beat up enemies with his normal attack. Which is why when playing as Bentley, you definitely need to use the binocucom to hit the enemies with sleep darts and walk up to them to place a bomb next to them to kill them. Bentley is the most defensive character overall, and he can hack into computers, which you can play as an avatar of Bentley fighting against firewalls. However, when that's all you do, it gets a little old. Bentley can also use his RC chopper to help out, and it can drop bombs and shoot lasers. However, it does suck that the chopper can't stop in place, so when dropping bombs on one target, you do have to fly in circles a little bit. Murray is the strongest character of the three, and he can kill every single enemy in the game in 2 hits. No joke, he's really overpowered, which is why it's good that you don't play as him that much, for the sake of balance. Murray can also pick up objects and enemies with his stomp move, and throw them at other things. However, there's really not much else to say about him. So gameplay-wise, one of the best aspects of it is how Sly, Bentley, and Murray have a Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles dynamic from Sonic 3, where all 3 characters control the same with their distinguishing characteristics, like Sly's agility, Bentley's bombs and sleep darts, and Murray's strength. And there are also gimmick missions like in Sly 1, however these fit into the story a lot better than they do in Sly 1. And speaking of missions, there are 8 worlds in Sly 2. The Cooper Gang visits France, India, Prague, and Canada, all complete with very diverse visuals. No 2 chapters in this game look alike. The graphics are quite nice, with much improved animated cutscenes that were in the original. And while the animation is nowhere near as good as Jak and Daxter or Ratchet and Clank, it gets the job done. And similar to the visuals, the music is very diverse and interesting. And this game was composed by Peter McConnell, and he does a great job making every track fit and have a very catchy feeling to it. And also there's little bonus movies that you watch after beating chapters 1, 3, 5, and 7. Some are cheesy commercials, and one of them is the behind the scenes where we really see the passion that went into making Sly 2 as great as it is. And of course these bonuses are in the PS2 version only, but we'll get back to that next time. Anyway, as for the worlds themselves, this game is a hub world, where you'll do missions as each character. You'll know who has a mission due to flashing signals in the sky. You go to a mission and you'll be briefed on what to do. Sly's missions typically range from pickpocketing keys, climbing, taking recons photos for Bentley, following people, and most of the stealth missions. And the stealth has been greatly improved from the last game due to the different types of enemies. Bentley's missions range from hacking computers, using his RC chopper, handling demolition, or anything that really requires intelligence, basically. And Murray's missions consist of beating people up and destroying things. I mean, it's really like Murray, again, doesn't get played as that much, so really, his missions aren't that complicated. But again, not that these are the only missions in the game. Of course, sometimes they shake things up a little bit more. But that leads me to the fact that some people might comment that they believe that the missions get repetitive. However, for me, it all depends on whether or not I'm having fun, and if what I'm doing has purpose. And believe it or not, in some way or another, every single mission in Sly 2 affects the story. Think of it like Jak 2, where most missions of the story were irrelevant, but towards the end of the game, you can tell they were running out of ideas. But Sly 2 never has a filler mission, and at the end of an episode, all your hard work comes together and you pull off an elaborate heist, often with a cheesy heist movie kind of music. And a lot of people bring up that you can't replay missions in a mission select. However, personally, I don't really care because I like seeing the missions play out in a sequence. And that isn't just an excuse, because when the feature is in Sly 3, I don't use it because I don't play games that way. I don't just pop in a game to play this mission or that mission. After I finish a game, if I ever come back to play that game, it's going to be a full playthrough. And anyway, not all the missions are fun. Like, a lot of them in Chapter 5 are particularly dull, but that doesn't detract from the experience. For me, one complaint I have with Sly 2 would be the level design specifically in Chapter 3 seems to, that it was designed with Sly in mind, and the other characters can have a harder time making it through, but that's about it. And I've never seen anybody bring that one up. The game also has a very balanced difficulty. No mission is too hard, however, the game gets harder as it goes along. So when Gexup tells you they spent 6 months on the damn mission in Chapter 3, he's full of shit. Because not only did I beat it easy as a kid, but now I can do it in like a minute or two. You know, before Gexup's disgrace of a final video, that segment was supposed to be me respectfully disagreeing, but nah, fuck that. Anyway, not even the dreaded water bug mission in Chapter 3 has ever given me trouble. In fact, let's watch me do it right now. I mean, I remember I was reading the comments in the SGB Sly 2 playthrough, and it was just ridiculous how much people hated that mission, and I'm just like, here we go, roll the clip. Anyway, bosses are actual fights this time around, and I like each character has a boss. Sly's boss are a mix of defense and offense, Bentley's bosses are just defense, and Murray's is pure offense, which is what their gameplay styles are all about. Next, since lives aren't a thing anymore, what are coins used for? Well, this game has a place called the Safe House where you switch characters, but you can also use Bentley's computer to access the shop where you can buy upgrades, and you can also exchange pickpocketed goods for 100 or so coins, or find a treasure in the hub for a couple hundred coins. Most of them are pretty useless, but an improvement from the last game is that there's an energy meter for upgrades. I call it an improvement because it means that you have to pick wisely as to when to use the best upgrades, and this can be refilled by picking up health. The must-buys for Sly would definitely be the smoke bomb, which you can use when you get caught to get away unnoticed, and the paraglider, which is useful to get more airtime, and the silent obliteration, which is an upgraded knockout smash. Bentley's must-haves are the hover pack, the snooze bomb to deal with big clusters of enemies, and the trigger bomb to throw a long-range bomb, and that can be detonated at your leisure. The only power you're ever going to want to buy with Murray is the Atlas Strength, which means that while carrying things he can run and jump, which he couldn't do before, and since Murray is so strong though, the other upgrades seem rather unnecessary. There are some mandatory ones, but due to the treasure finding and the low amount of must-have weapons, you'll never not have enough money, and the other way to find upgrades is by collecting the returning clue bottles. There are 30 in every hub. Look, I don't look forward to collecting these in a 100% run, but I can't get mad about them, because I don't have to collect them, and they're nowhere near as bad as Sly Masks and Sly 4, so yeah, if you don't like them, then don't collect them. I mean, I've heard someone say this game is way too long, about 12 hours. I couldn't even believe what I was hearing. I mean, this game takes me 7.5 to 8 hours, and I asked, what took so long? And the clue bottles was the answer. And then, the follow-up statement was that Sly 3 was shorter. I mean, if you want a 100% an open world game on your first playthrough, be my guest. Personally, I always want to be familiar with the level design first, but you can't get mad at the game when you choose to do an optional side quest on your first run, which made the game longer. Yeah, duh, that's on you. And then you're going to compare it to 65%ing a different game? Like, that's like saying that, oh, Wind Waker is longer than Ocarina of Time because it took me longer to 100% Wind Waker on my first playthrough than it did to any percent Ocarina of Time on my first playthrough. It's like, what gives? It's not a fair comparison, honestly. It's like you're choosing to do something optional and it's increasing your game time, and then you're going to blame the game for that. Like, that doesn't make any sense. Anyway, the abilities given to you by the saves are pretty good. Especially the long toss ability, which extends the range of the trigger bomb and an alarm clock gadget. One thing that bothers me about the upgrades in this game, though, is that 3 of them are blocked via password. Those being the speed up move and the Tom gadget. And what's that, you say? Well, the Cartoon Network block Toonami had giveaways for PlayStation 2 titles such as the Jack games and the Ratchet games and Sly 1, 2, and 3. The Tom gadget is basically the alarm clock gadget, only with the Toonami character. I mean, like, I don't know why the speed up move had to be blocked via password when that's literally a very useful upgrade. And then the last upgrade with a code would be the Mega Jump gadget, which you can only use after 100%ing the game. So it's useless. I mean, there's no story left, there's no clue bottles to collect. It's pointless, there's nothing you can do with it. Unless you want to glitch into the safe house, I guess. And with all that said and done, that was my take on Sly 2. I love this game's story, its world, its missions, and its gameplay. What more could I want? I don't care about stuff like the same boss for 2 episodes, because this is a game that had passion behind every single pixel, thus translating into a great game experience. And that's all I look for in a game. Sly 2 delivers that in droves. So that's why I don't have a problem saying that this is one of the greatest games ever, in my opinion, and I don't say that very much. So anyway, next up is going to be Sly 3 Honor Among Thieves for the PlayStation 2, as well as the HD collection for PlayStation 3, PlayStation Network, and PlayStation Vita. And with that said, this has been Jay of Jay's Reviews, signing out.